Hello and welcome to Business Today MindRush Pods. I am Siddharth Zarabi and with me today, Bharat Kaushal, the Corporate Officer for Hitachi Limited and the Managing Director for Hitachi India. With us also, my co-moderator on this pod series that we have been bringing you in partnership and association with PricewaterhouseCoopers is the Chairperson of PwC in India, Sanjeev Krishan. Welcome to both of you. Bharat, welcome. Not many people would be aware of the history of Hitachi. Most people would say it's one of the many fantastic old Japanese brands that have been working in India. But on this pod series, we try and not just talk about business, but go behind the scenes of that business and that brand. And that's where I want to start by just teasing this for our viewers that of so many things, you also have an association with Bhakra Nangal. Now, what was a Japanese company doing at Bhakra Nangal?
Well, believe it or not, India has been the oldest overseas presence for Hitachi anywhere in the world since 1933. And post-independence in the 1950s, the first railway locomotive came from Hitachi in 1953. The first telephone exchange in India was made on Hitachi's equipment, and the turbines of Bhakra Nangal Dam also came from Hitachi. So in terms of history and association, from a time when India just got independence and took on the self-reliance mission, the partnership began then. And today we are in infrastructure, we are in manufacturing, we're also in digital, but the spectrum of the many Indias that are presented to us, there are several in which Hitachi has a very meaningful role to play.
Sanjeev, this is a common thread that one encounters during many conversations with so-called old economy brands, that they've not been here for like 10, 15, 20 years. They go back even before the Republic was founded. And therefore, a company like Hitachi, would you say that it's amongst those early proponents of Atmanirbhar Bharat in a way?
Yeah, well, I mean, in a few years' time, they will be almost 100 years in the country. So, and the impact that they're making today, manufacturing, we want to get self-reliant. Infrastructure, we want to get more competitive, whether it comes to logistics cost or otherwise. And of course, Bharat, you just mentioned digital as well. I mean, where their payment solutions, what they do, they're also in the new economy. So every facet of the Indian economy, Hitachi is present.
Okay, so that's what we will do, viewers, in the roughly 30 odd minutes that we are going to continue with this conversation. Let's jump in to understand manufacturing. And why manufacturing? Because after reforms, Bharat, and you've seen this, manufacturing kind of fell out of favor. It's not as if it stopped. Many companies that were not able to compete were replaced by other companies, foreign entrants with better technology, with larger access to pools of capital. But over the last 10 years, we have seen this policy push along with a policy architecture and schemes for boosting manufacturing. How do you describe the state of manufacturing in India? And because you're a global corporation, how would you place us globally as far as this effort is concerned?
So, manufacturing, I think, in my opinion, in the Indian context in the last 10 years, has received a whole lot of attention. First, they said China +1, the world economy is looking for other alternates, or in India as a generator of employment. But the manufacturing space, if you understand, I mean, the Chinese, Koreans, and many Southeast Asian economies had built capacities even in 1985 for 6-7 billion people and amortized costs over high margin Western economies with their competitiveness. So they could very easily question the competitiveness of manufacturing in India. And the other big change in the landscape of manufacturing globally was the introduction of robotics, which meant that principally assisted intelligence was going to augmented intelligence, was going to autonomous intelligence. So the new manufacturing requirement was a blend of operating technologies, IT solutions, and also a new society which is transforming with a new sense of empowerment and entitlement. So when we looked at which industries to focus in, capital goods will always remain very important in a large economy, and we have now become the world's biggest rail company or the biggest energy transmission company, with many new families joining into the Hitachi fold. And that itself has been a big turning point for our manufacturing base in India. It's not just about India for India, which is a very large market and has the ability to pay for better quality now. And it's no more like our competitors did 10, 15 years ago, low cost, low margin in India and made exports to get higher margins. The competitiveness, but with higher quality, has been the bedrock on which all these new policy frameworks have been built. The other is the transition technology versus foundational technologies in manufacturing. So the existing asset classes don't have to be rendered redundant when you manufacture new things. You have to make them better and smarter.
Give us an example so that the average person who is listening in can
For
relate
instance,
it.
I referred about rail business and energy business. The cost to income ratio in these businesses are 97, 98%. So their leeway to move and transit these large balance sheet assets is very difficult. But if I can put a generative AI solution which is cloud-based on either a power sector equipment, which will then prevent losses from storage of renewable energy, which is the big ticket green.
So adding a modern layer over a...
Correct. Then I can prevent losses when power goes from base load to peak load. Similarly, in rail, if I can detect a problem much earlier, then the maintenance cost advantage is as high as 25%, even in the context of various legacies of systems coexisting in Indian Railway. So you allow them first the bandwidth from existing assets to adopt more modern and ambitious goals like 2030 and 2050 and 2070 for zero carbon and net zero and a variety of other sustainable drivers that define policy.
Sanjeev, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, no, one of the things that has been completely fascinating is the transformation that India is seeing in many of the segments that you mentioned, and India's endeavor to become more competitive. And particularly when you talk about logistics, and railways is a big part of it. I think you've been part of the journey with the Indian Railways for a very long time.
Yes.
And I think that publicly you have said as to what is the contribution, and that's been acknowledged as well. I just want to ask that, from a policy regime standpoint, at one level, Japan-India cooperation, government-to-government cooperation has always been of a very high nature. But where do you think the business-to-business cooperation is, which has enabled you to contribute what you have managed to do so far?
So earlier, big companies, in my opinion, decided to do it all themselves. First of all, the environment has changed and no one can do everything themselves for the size of the change. But what has grown silently in 25, 30 years of the reform process is a tier 2, tier 3 India, which is very humble and hungry. They've been vendors traditionally, and they have now aspire, when I said hungry, to become partners. So when you enter India, there is already a playing field provided by both state-owned companies as well as private sector companies who can either do contract manufacturing with you or be parts which are very competitive, and they are already having credentials of being global suppliers. I mean, in the rail business, there is the big Indian Railway, which is one of the largest networks. There is urban mobility solution, which are the metros, which have all come. And there is also the high precision engineering coming with the high speed train or the bullet train between first phase of Ahmedabad to Mumbai. All of it, Hitachi is involved. I mean, that's our proprietary technology in the high speed train together with Kawasaki. But, the metro is a case in point where new things, autonomous intelligence is at play. But the Indian Railway mobilization requires multiple cost-efficient solutions, which can be Indian as well. And so when I look at a metro, I may see that I make the car body, the design is mine, I get the propulsion and train control systems as my technology transfer. but I will also use the door maker, the HVAC maker, the power electronics, the gangway. All of this will be done in India because they are already suppliers willing to then graduate to become partners and build a partner ecosystem, which for a Japanese company is also in cultural consonance with how Japan has grown.
Since you're talking about the growth of Japan, this is a question that keeps popping up. How did a country the size of Japan and its population become such a massive technology leader? From your sense as someone who's been here, understands the Japanese culture, its focus on quality, how did that happen? Because many here would agree that a significant part of China's technological prowess today is on account of Japanese investments happening many decades ago in China and building up internal capacities, Bharat.
Yes, that is true. I mean, there was a lot of economic engagement and collaboration with the United States and Japan in terms of academia, industry, and government policy shift, which had helped Japan after World War II in building the right pillars. But Japan's own market was smaller. It was a good experimental ground to export technologies all the way to United States, but in every direction of developed world first. And the emphasis on quality, that 99 is not 100, that was a critical differentiator where you could do things with scalability and affordability in different economies of the world and try that very guerrilla tactics of changing, turning around. It helped a lot in India too. I mean, we have more than 20 specs in the 30 metro projects envisaged in the country, from a 5 feet 4 inch car body to a 4 feet 8 inch car body. The whole engineering changes. Now we can do that design engineering, the process automation, the implementation of that, and the requisite R&D that is required, all in India.
So do Indian companies meet the 99 is not 100 parameter that you just spoke about?
Well, I won't use one scale for all because there are many Indias in India.
That's a good one, Sanjeev. Yeah, that's a good one. Many Indias in India.
Because industry 1.0 and 2.0 also exists in certain areas and 3 and 4 also exists. So there is more technology intervention required in certain cases. I mean, when
you say that, Bharat, I'm tempted to interrupt you that what you are saying in sort of common man language would be that there is a apartment tower where apartments sell for 100 crore and right outside it is a small slum. So many Indias in India is actually at a social level perhaps.
It is true. It is true. And it has changed the other way. Rest of the world's experience vis-a-vis India was different because industry evolved to 4.0 first before it unleashed society 5.0. In India, the championship position that we've taken in 10 years in digital India has suddenly made the society more empowered and entitled. And there is a reverse engineering from demand learnings that artificial intelligence is really helping. I mean, we had a century old of supply side credentials, all operating technologies and technology combined with IoT engines. But we were never able to stitch the demand. Today's India is that the stakeholder has gone beyond the customer to the user. So if you imagine an economic value chain to do business in India competitively, then you look at energy as a service, you look at mobility as a service, infrastructure as a service. I may be a big player, but all of these things have to finally go to the user who should be able to assess that it's not just a good solution for him, it's also a good experience for him. And he will continue to do that. So there is a kind of connected society challenge of both centripetally reaching out to the individual who's the end user and centrifugally enabling him to go out from a human-centric perspective. That's why the payment business that Sanjeev mentioned, the education business where all Kendriya Vidyalayas or full states run on our platform with common denominators between urban and rural households. We are the largest issuers in private sector of Ayushman Bharat IDs in the healthcare sector, but the doctor training, nurse training and AIMS is also on Hitachi.
Sanjeev, I have to put that question to you and not to Bharat. How does a corporation manage to be doing so many things, What is that Is it part of management culture? Is it because there are highly educated, highly trained professionals? What is it that for a company of Hitachi's size, more than the size, look at the span of activities
Just
that
to help you, Sanjeev, we are Indians, so we can. But
okay.
No, I think one, of course, we know that Japan has always been the cutting edge of technology, innovation and R&D. I think that's one of the things. And it's always fired by any of these developments, I suppose, can only be fired by two things. One is capital, availability of capital, and I think that's been one of the big things. And that is when you are able to monetize your ideas in innovation and technology. You generate more capital because you monetize it, people embrace it, etc. You're able to make money, and you have fresh capital for fresh ideas.
And Japan as a nation has been funding a lot of infrastructure development and various projects in India.
Absolutely, absolutely. And partly that's got to do with the government-to-government connect that India has had very strong with Japan. And the other one I would simply say is, the fact that you have been agile to what the shifts have been. In some ways, you have embraced the shift and changes very, very quickly, and you have adapted to them. There are many nations at this point in time who possibly have not adapted to the change, particularly the technology change, as quickly as, for instance, many of the Asian countries have. And I think that also stands out to me. I was just thinking that maybe we should go on to some of the core things that Bharat spoke about. But one thing I was wanting to pick up, Bharat, if you look at Japan-India collaboration, I've been noticing that, the big Japanese corporations like yourselves, I think you continue to do very, very well. And many of your other counterparts, Japanese counterparts, which are conglomerates, as you said, are doing very well in India. But somehow we're also noticing that fresh, new Japanese companies, particularly who are smaller or who in the Indian parlance we'll call mid-corporates, have this, for them it's still a bit of a hump to cross to come to India. Is there something that India can do more? Because, for you the ecosystem is very important. So I'm just wondering, is that you see that?
It is a real observation. And when a Virgin Atlantic or a British Airways will look at an Indian market, you look at middle class at 150, 200 million. But a Panasonic and a Hitachi consumer company may look at middle class at 500 million. However, the Japanese ramen noodle company may look at India like Pepsi at 1 billion people. So there are multiple definitions, and this is very unique about India, that how do you sort of get the right market within India, because India currently presents itself as a market for everything. So you don't look at it as a one country solution and replicate an outside solution. That is one part. But the Japanese trading companies are actually huge umbrellas which bring in their own group of supply chain to tier 2, 3, 4 companies. And they all come in, but they all come in under the big name. And that's how you protect them. Right. I mean, it's about better stakeholder management. I mean, you have to have, to the point that you were making, there are multiple cash flow ecosystems of business in large companies. Somewhere money will churn 3 times in a year, somewhere it will not churn once in 3 years. And the expectation now is to combine a smart solution which will bring both these businesses together. So you have to have some visibility on stakeholder management and say, this is my balance sheet looking, this is my profit and loss. I will build an equilibrium and continue to satisfy more people. And we've had a unique experience for a Japanese company that many new families, ABB's power grid business, Ansaldo's rail business, Thales from France, Global Logic from Silicon Valley, all became Hitachi. So from a cultural standpoint, we were Japanese, enjoyed the trust and reliability, even if we were slower and expensive. We had lots of Indian people, but now we got different cultures to assimilate here. A Silicon Valley culture, a Swedish and Swiss culture, French and Italian cultures all came into one.
So how do you and how does the company manage the natural friction that one would imagine would arise through this? How does change management happen, both at the cultural as well as the operational level?
I mean, going back to the point that I was just making on the image, Japanese companies in India, as Sanjeev also pointed out in another context, in another way, have been found to be sometimes slower and more expensive over years. However, the trust, the reliability of technology, no one will ask a Hitachi, does this work or not? So change management meant that as more and more Japanese giants are becoming global giants, they needed to draw up a new list to protect the image and reputation, which is bigger than any brand value, that any other mechanism of brand value can create, like your reputation, your trust, the safety, the quality, the delivery time commitments, all of those things. So the must-have is different from the good-to-have. And the must-haves are non-negotiable. The only real message, and that's being Japanese enough for walking that talk. You can't bring Japan and make it here. It's very different. Because they will do more for the commitment that they have made.
But isn't that the trend that one has noticed, that when Japanese companies come, they create clusters and there are hotels that are dedicated to the Japanese way of eating, Japanese way of living, like mini Japans that we see, especially in the NCR region. I've been to a couple. Does that continue, or has that also changed?
Siddharth, out of my 34 years at work, I've spent 27 years, and 18 years as CEO, 10 years in the bank, and 8 years in the industry. A lot has changed also. The younger Japanese are also bringing their families, their children are going to school here. It's the familiarity of the language, the understanding of the culture. There are nearly 2,000 Indian restaurants, I think 1,200 in Tokyo alone. That means, whether it's the fast-selling Indian food but the familiarity has increased. Earlier on, you're saying it absolutely correct, that you needed to create a conducive environment which was similar to that in Japan to make it happen. But now, with more and more people of different originations becoming Japanese faces.
And is golf still core to corporate
Well,
culture?
yes,
Japanese?
golf is very dear.
What do you like to be called, Bharat-san or Bharat-ji? What rings a bell with you?
Well, increasingly over these years, everyone in office would call you Bharat-san because, that's the G in Japan, or Mr. But yeah, it depends on whom I'm talking to.
Sanjeev-san, please step in with another question.
No, I was going to ask that, if I look at the progress that India has made over the last many years, and you particularly spoke about the last 10 years, do you think anything else India could have done to make sure that, since 2014 in particular, that could have even further excited Hitachi more about the land that it currently is? You are almost 100 years in the country.
Yep.
Yes.
As I said, you are from manufacturing to logistics, infra, digital solutions, everywhere you're there. Is there anything more that India could have done? Basically, anything policy-wise that India could have done more?
I don't want to use it as as the forum to lodge any kind of
grievance
here. But at the same time, in different industries, it's worked differently. In some cases where we see that India can take one of the top 3-4 leadership positions, the push is seen very differently. And the coming together of Japanese technology as the origin or the basic platform is encouraged a lot. In still others where in the name, because we are also a noisy democracy, and I say this with a lot of respect for all our processes, but sometimes you can't be when it was only price bid, Japanese companies would be outsmarted 35% on an average for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's only later on that when there was a life cycle cost or another qualitative criteria, that they started finding.
And policy makers in India started to realize this,
Yes.
after the first round of contracts, they realized that it's not about the spot price, it's about the life price, as you were saying.
When I was in Washington in the 90s in the World Bank, I remember a report that we were the only country of that size who spent more money on maintenance of roads than construction of roads, new roads. And our railway network had not grown that much. And in the last 15 years, everything about that has transformed.
Sanjeev, I want to step in with a question, and this is the bullet train project, because it's an absolutely headline grabbing point, and we've seen several questions also raised about it, which is not the point of our conversation. What I want you to explain to all those who are watching, why is the bullet train project important for India, and what will it mean for our technological prowess? Because apart from just the number of people who will be riders on that, what does it mean in the larger picture?
Actually, I wish everyone talks about this in this manner as your question is, Siddharth. And I say this because it's not about Sabarmati to BKC in Mumbai and 504 kilometers and wealth creation plus timing. When you do industrial engineering is about platforms. When I bring a defense platform, an avionics or a space platform, I also completely transform food processing, industrial packaging, and multiple other things with the capability set. This is a new species of high precision industrial engineering that you're bringing to transportation sector. And therefore, what the high-speed train, the first one is, in any country, it takes more time than what is envisaged. There are issues, and each country, India will require up to 55 or 60 degrees of temperature, not altering the technology, 100 degrees, 100% of humidity, and multiple new safety norms that are also coming globally. So it's not just a transfer of technology. But what you do in building all that work is that you are almost redefining. Remember, Suzuki is not about the automotive revolution, but the transformation of the manufacturing landscape that happened. The whole just-in-time and all of those major credentials.
And today India is such a strong player in auto manufacturing.
They're a celebration of Japan and India. Similarly, when you do a high-speed industrial engineering activity like this, you're transforming the meaning of what geography means in this whole space of safety standards. I mean, the bullet train, in an emergency of an earthquake in Japan, when it stops in few fractions of seconds, the coffee cup on your table will not move from that speed. That's how reliable it is. And it started in 1964 in the Tokyo Olympics. Till today, we've been lucky. Nothing untoward has ever happened.
Wow.
That is 99 not being 100.
Okay.
I want to turn the attention to one very important topic. We talk about sustainability. In some of my conversation, it has come, particularly with the Japanese CEOs, that maybe they felt that they have been a little bit behind, if I may call it so, right? I mean, they've not been so much focused on it. I think there have been discussions about looking for green energy sources from Australia, even India. When we talk about energy storage, they want to learn, etc. But Hitachi has been doing quite a significant amount of work even on that segment. So where does Hitachi really find itself coming from a land that possibly is a little behind, at least my perception, and working in a land, India, where of course we are trying to make oversized investments in everything green, including hydrogen and so on and so forth. So how does Hitachi look at the...
Well, in complete fairness this is a very important question, and that's why I'm saying, Japan was the first one to raise the bar without making any noise on green and environment and sustainability when everything was understood as one. And the Japanese financial institutions, government finance was always linked. I remember when I was a banker, I launched it in SBI and ICICI myself, bringing Japanese money for clean green financing. But today's conundrum is that the benchmarks are not defined. So the boarding car doesn't have a full destination. It's an incremental delta of improvement from where you are. I mean, where it can become a business in its own right. So the hesitation of capacity building vis-a-vis the experimentation that is required makes you focus either on, as I said, on foundational technologies, which will be new source right from the input all the way in the run-up to the delivery, or in transitional technologies where the existing assets are getting transformed, getting smarter and greener. So the focus in Japan was always to do on existing assets, because then the transition is better understood. I mean, today, including in artificial intelligence, I mean, on one side you have humongous responsibility. We are talking everywhere about data free flow with trust. And there are everyday instances. And this is not to dissuade or go away. This is transformative. It's bigger than splitting the atom or the invention of internet. But how should we responsibly take it to our operating technologies? I mean, when high-speed computing will do artificial intelligence data in fractions of seconds, how will it translate on the offline complementarity? It's such a big challenge that if my name is getting put, it should have been test-tried the manner in which Hitachi is understood by the market or trusted by the market.
So I'm sure I was just going to ask one more question as a follow-up. I'm sure Hitachi must be doing in their R&D centers a lot of research on how do they monetize data with all the quantum stuff, etc., etc. But one issue which is always there when we talk about AI and sustainability in particular is that how do we make AI sustainable? Because it requires so much energy, right? So much energy,
Absolutely.
data centers and all that. They require so much energy. So is Hitachi working on that one as well?
Yes, a whole lot, including, we have also nuclear technology, and the smart modular reactors are being considered globally for the data center investments and quantums that are required. So there are two gorillas in the room. One is the data center, because high-speed computing will guzzle, and they say that the Amazons of the world and Microsofts and everyone else are paying higher than aluminum makers. The other side is the imbalance that fast charging is creating in the power supply. So, states in India are saying don't charge after 6 p.m. Countries in the heart of Europe are complaining that we take up only 40 kilowatts to heat up the whole house in a day, but you take 140 kilowatts to charge once for 15 minutes. You're creating an imbalance.
Imbalance in the grid, and grids.
So the data side can get corrected, because at the speed of computation, most of the data will get exhausted sooner. And the newer engines of data will come, and then the whole artificial intelligence utilization will go into more technical builds, as they say, into vectors and so on, before even the high-speed computing can work on them. And then the next is the utilization. What do you do with that highly super fast computed data into operating technologies? How does my life change? I may know whether when I'm eating something that my preferences have changed. But what about the whole environment, the ecosystem in which I'm learning? How will my rail car respond to your new preference and show infotainment to you? So getting that whole chain is challenging, and you have to create visibility for growing a business. It is not to shy away from experimentation and innovation. That's why we use a word at Hitachi called co-create now. And we must have partnerships, with most of the IITs, Indian Institutes of Science, as much as state-owned companies, as much as the ministries who are now promoting enhancement of capital good on one side and promoting, the digital empowerment in health and agriculture. Everyone is a learning experience first. I'm not going there first to say what I will do and push my product or service here. I want to learn that landscape and see part of it I can partner today, and many other parts maybe I will continue to partner.
As we wind down this conversation, I want to end by taking up the topic that both of you just spoke about, and the rise of the intelligent age in some ways. AI is already touching various people in various ways, and the promise seems to be immense. So two parts to my question. What is your company doing about this in India, if you could relate instances? And broadly speaking, since you sort of traversed, your life arc has gone through several sort of phases and industries, what does it mean for Indian business as a medium to long-term opportunity?
Like any major transformational change, AI is a reality. It is now unleashed. You can't stop it. So you have to ride on it, and you have to embrace it with that earnestness and commitment. There is no doubt, as a policy, as a business, as the end user. However, first of all, the responsibility of what is responsible AI? How do you at what point something that I am building can also be subjected, and this is not about cyber security or anything else. It's the kind of manifestation of augmented realities, mixed realities, and the combination of all of this, that it must at some point also take responsibility for protecting what mustn't happen. If it's good for you, that's a very difficult and big challenge today. And that's why whether it's, I mean, you want to where demand, and everybody in India, 500 million people have Ayushman Bharat IDs in India. And there is a huge demand and supply gap between healthcare facilities and the entitlement of healthcare. I mean, do you really get AI in clinical treatment? From that point, all the way to safety of my train or anything. I mean, I'm doing predictive analytics. I'm telling you, you'll reach your doctor's appointment at 9:45 tomorrow if you just hopped into an Uber and then the intelligent traffic system and then the metro, and you'll be out there. But what if something is not protected in the manner it should have been, to compromise? So on one side, there is this genuine challenge. But the other side is that it changes. I mean, when you map futurology with technologists, and we have a global center for AI in India, in Bangalore, and we are doing solutions from biodiversity to, of course, energy rail, but also education, agriculture, all the way to metaverse. So Californian fire prediction, and when people should move out because the wind direction and all that, all the way to doing more mundane stuff for day-to-day efficacies in business models. Everything is being provided. But you have to think how much of it and at what speed should I adopt it in that architecture.
Okay.
So that the whole system is in consonance with the new delivery of input that is happening. It's no more your choice.
But Sanjeev, just weigh in on that, because recently we heard from someone who said that as far as India is concerned as an economy, it will not be a laggard in AI, as we've missed many previous technological evolutions. Do you agree with that? And I'll let you have the final word on that subject, Sanjeev.
I certainly think so, because where would you find the amount of talent, tech talent, that anywhere else in the world but India? And as I keep saying,
but do we have the money to invest in billions in an LLM kind of? Nandan Nilekani made a mention about that. Is it a capital issue as well?
I don't think there is any scarcity of capital if it can be used for private good, but also for public good today. The amount of spending that government is doing is enormous these days. We know that there is an AI mission that has been set up. So I'm quite sanguine that India will be at the forefront of this. And I can tell you that networks like ours are very keen on being able to leverage Indian talent so that that becomes at the forefront of AI development. I will also say one thing, that technology may become obsolete. Any technology may become obsolete, but it is people's ingenuity which will always remain. And hence, it is us, by continuing to upskill ourselves, continuing to upgrade ourselves, that today we are talking about AI, tomorrow it may be something else. If we continue to upskill ourselves, which India does the best, which India, I must tell you, so many Indian students in India, outside India, so many STEM students which come out of it. And that's why I'm pretty certain, not just hopeful, that India will continue to be at the forefront of any technology, not just AI, today and also years ahead.
Bharat.
Well, I think that this question of do we have enough money for it, first of all. I mean, yes, we are not a very big financial power. We are a great economic power. So the scalability models, affordability models,
absolutely,
when done with speed.
We export labor. We don't export capital in the sense that.
Correct. We are not huge sovereign fund investments overseas and all that. Fine, but you can't ignore, and it's a young demography. So far, the Mumbai-Pune expressway was the romance played for India shining. The bullet train may be one of those things for this new generation. But the speed with which, and technology does, as Sanjeev rightly said, has a shelf life. The speed with which AI can deliver human completeness, physical, social, or psychological, as an experience, has a limitless potential. It is completely cannot be matched by any other thing. Ultimately, in a connected society, a business strategy is evergreen only if it's in the direction of providing more human completeness. Technologies will come and go. But you have to, that is why it is so important to get to life cycle issues, human life cycle issues. Understand that. It's not a P&L business strategy today to look at economic value chains right up to users. It's if you don't understand the user and the change in the user and the generations of change every time that you will meet him or he will be confronted with it, you can't build a business model anymore.
Absolutely, and as we end, I just want to remind our viewers that when Y2K happened, it was a moment of fear for a lot of corporations and businesses, and that became a massive opportunity for India, and in some ways took our IT and IT-enabled services to where
Correct.
it is. I think from what I hear, not just from Bharat but as well, Sanjeev as well, is and other conversations that perhaps AI is also in a similar sort of spot for us. It could be a defining change for the Indian economy, but we'll come to that on another episode of MindRush Pods. For now, I want to thank Bharat San for his time.
Thank you.
And Sanjeev for his hospitality. I just have to let you know that this is just a very small corner of the PwC office in New Delhi that we've been here. In previous and other shows, you've seen us at various locations, and hopefully at the next one, you'll see another very nice location for this pod. Bharat, thank you. Sanjeev, thank you once
Thank you,
again.
Siddharth.
And you, the viewer. We'll come back with more. Hope you've enjoyed this as much as we have enjoyed bringing this to you. See you soon. Bye-bye.